Right. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this second day of September. We're just exiting that conversation about the governors that are on trial. Of course, you know, those that have faced impeachment and those, like you see on the front page of the Daily Nation, that Nairobi governors Johnson Sakaja, the MCAs have collected signatures to remove him from office, but we wait for the processing of that. And then, of course, you see the governors that are expected to be arraigned today by the EACC to face corruption-related charges. Governor of Bomet, Hilary Barchok, and former Governor of Bungoma, Wycliffe Wangamati. There's an editorial cartoon that is on page 13 I would want us to take a look at. It appears like there's a flu going on. Governors, then he sneezes. Impeachment flu is very sneezes, then sneezes and says very, very contagious. A lot of effects of a flu and perhaps fever. We'll have to see how that develops. But let's also transition to the conversation about e-government procurement, because the governors held a meeting yesterday and they spoke. Hear them.
We therefore call on the National Treasury to immediately withdraw the circular directing the counties to implement e-GPay until proper consultations, legal alignment, and capacity building are undertaken. If it's not working, it's not working. And no one can shove it down our throats. You must address the issues we're raising. And you must respect that we're two levels of government. And we're both a creation of the Constitution of Kenya.
Kama counties sisi hatuna shida na e-procurement, lakini hatutasingiziwa kuitumia kwa sababu haifanyi kazi.
So the governors have spoken, and 2 weeks ago it was the National Assembly that passed a motion or agreed with the Committee on Delegated Legislation to nullify a circular issued from the National Treasury indicating that all government departments must procure through the e-government procurement system. I don't know, Senator Sigei, I don't think the Senate has applied its mind on this particular one, but with reality being what it is, that a National Assembly has nullified a circular, never mind, it was never subjected to them, or so we understand. The governors have rejected the system. The government, in this case President William Ruto, and National Treasury CS John Mbadi are saying that you have to do it because this is the only way we are going to save the country from corruption. So what happens?
We are transitioning from discussing corruption and into now the e-procurement aspect. Part of what I would really love us to have a conversation candidly as Kenyans is the idea behind this e-procurement process. Wandeto, my colleague here, said we successfully devolved corruption, and all of us on this table do agree that one of our biggest challenges to development, growth, and service delivery to the public is corruption. It's not only limited to the national government, it is rampant in the counties. I was just running through my mind on the number of governors who are currently being processed. I've got the governor for Trans Nzoia. He took plea. He managed to get an injunction in court. The other day, EACC sent back, DPP sent back the file of Kiambu governor, Marsabit governor, and Governor Barchok is taking plea today in court at 9 o'clock, as well as former governor Bungoma Wangamati taking plea. That tells you there is a problem, because it can't be that EACC, DPP, and other investigative agencies are fighting something that doesn't exist. And one of the reasons why some of these governors are actually being investigated and charged is procurement processes. When you are charged of conflict of interest, it means that conflict of interest developed out of a transaction that happened in the course of procurement. Abuse of office, acquisition of public resources through wrong processes or means. It boils down to the procurement process, which CS Mbadi and Treasury are trying to cure by introducing this bit. We haven't applied our minds in the Senate to this circular, but I have had conversations with the technical persons involved in this process. And one of the things that I know is that this was something that was conceived in the previous government. Actually, during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, this e-procurement process was conceived. Unfortunately, it was never implemented. Just same case as the affordable housing program. That was there. Unfortunately, it was never implemented. In this case, this government has just decided to make the very unpopular decision, the bold decision to say, for us to fight this menace, which is procurement, in all our government institutions, this circular was sent out. And what Mbadi said, I listened to the interview that you had with Mbadi and also his presentation before a different forum, saying that I did not send this circular to the National Assembly for purposes of any processing by the National Assembly. It was being sent since National Assembly, just like any other government institution, is a procuring entity. It procures its services. So it was sent out to all government institutions and agencies for purposes of them to apply. And it came in, because I went back to the Hansard actually, and I think it was a point of order was raised on the 14th of August in the floor of the House as to the legality of that circular. And that is when it was picked by the committee headed by Chekonga as to the legality of the circular that had not been sent into the National Assembly for purposes of it to debate, but for it to consider applying it in its procurement processes. And that is why now the 19th of August, it got into the order paper for purposes of discussion by the Assembly, leading to the ultimate decision to nullify it. And so
is that decision binding on anyone?
Now, this is what Mbadi said, and I'm very sure my colleague here, Wandeto, will probably say something about it. Mbadi says, I did not send it to you to process it, whether to legalize it or legitimize it in any way. It didn't require any parliamentary process, according to him. He sent it out as one of the institutions that procure services, directing it to apply. Then Parliament picked up and said, look, you are overstepping your mandate. You ought to have subjected it to a legislative process, because it's a policy that when you look at, of course, the provisions of the Statutory Instruments Act, it is one of those things that would actually lead to policy change. And that is why Parliament said, as a consequence of its effect, then it ought to have been subjected to us for purposes of delegated legislation, running it through the process required. And if it then require amendment to the law, then it didn't meet the threshold as required. They even quoted the provisions of the Constitution, Article 2, Article 10, Article 27, on participation and subjecting it to the processes that requires it to ultimately got an approval. But Mbadi argues and says, look, I didn't send it to you to process. I was just notifying you that we want to do this. And when you look at now the objective of this particular circular, it will serve to cure this cancer of corruption.
Yet the county governors are saying...
The governors are saying we are not...
independent institutions.
Yes. Well, independent in what sense? Independent to be allowed to continue to corrupt?
No, what I'm saying is...
Yeah, I know. I'm not actually saying you're saying anything wrong. I'm just asking myself, the fact that you're being told, this is, it's like IFMIS. IFMIS was rejected when it came in, when it was tried. This is also a rejection of a process that will ensure fairness. It will give us some level of transparency. It will stop these governors from giving their girlfriends and their boyfriends contracts as against deserving businesses and Kenyans who actually
will it?
Sorry?
Will it?
I believe so. I have had a conversation with a technical person, actually, when your poster went out yesterday.
The system doesn't flag people as girlfriends and boyfriends, does it?
It does not.
Yeah.
But what it does is, all procurement service, actually your procurement plan as an authorized person in the institution will be uploaded in the portal.
Yeah.
All directorates will have to upload in the portal. And every service provider, for instance, if you are a contractor, in a certain sector, you also have got to register in the e-procurement. So whenever there is a service or there is a contract that needs to be given out, then all of us are alerted that this thing is there.
Okay.
Evaluation is online. I know it has got its challenges, but I would tell you from where I sit, I would rather have it so that the rest of us can get an opportunity to try and get that service rather than
that's fine,
fail to get because you don't know the governor or you don't know the procurement person or you don't know the CEO.
All right, Senator. Let me hear. No, see, you're making me call you. But you confused me, Senator Hillary, Governor Hillary. So, but
the other Hillary who is here.
Wait. No, don't go there. Especially now that on that point, the governors are insisting that they are independent and they are calling for consultation. Are they wrong to ask for consultation? Because if you're rolling out a policy that has such a national implication as the national government, do they deserve some space, some latitude perhaps?
Yes, they do, and not just the governors. I think all procuring entities should be consulted. I think the major criticism about the rollout of EGPS has been the following. One, very low stakeholder engagement. I think that everybody has come to say, you know what, we were not consulted, we were not aware. And the other thing is what we are seeing as a rushed rollout. Like putting it, to use one of the governor's words, hatutasingiziwa, it cannot be pushed down our throats. And the third one is, of course, what is seen as legal overreach. And this is, I think, where Parliament really took issue with the circular, questioning whether the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury on his own can be able to basically issue new laws relating to procurement. Some, in this country, procurement is governed by through Article 227 of the Constitution, and that article by there has two very, very interesting things that maybe Buddy should look at. The first thing it says that procurement has to be done in a manner that is fair.
Yep.
If you just use the word, pick the word fair, I know there are several other words used there, transparent, whatever, but it has to be fair. The other one is that if you look at the same Article 227, you go to Section 2B, it also talks about that procurement cannot be discriminatory. It cannot, have unfair competition or discriminatory. Now, if you look at this EGPS, there are two potential things that are coming out that we need to really be careful about. Now, in this country, we have areas without even internet. We have also people who deserve access to procurement opportunities, government procurement opportunities, who may be suffer certain disadvantage. There could be persons living with disability. It could be as a result of literacy levels. And this is all the things that, someone will just need to go to court and say, you know what, this whole thing is, is unconstitutional, is already, the contravening Article 227. So, other than just Article 227, then of course you have the Public Finance Management Act and the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. So these were the laws that govern procurement. So for the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury to come up and issue a circular that significantly alters how procurement is done in this country, without even a fallback position, because that has been the other criticism. What is a fallback position? We have lessons to learn from IFMIS, which I think is now in its 20-something year, if I'm not wrong. But IFMIS is still struggling, from system outages to inconsistencies to bypasses. So how do we basically be able to pick up, from these sort of things? And as I finish this, I know we are implementing EGPS, and President said correctly so, to cure, issues like corruption. But I don't think corruption in this country will be cured through systems. Actually, my observation is that systems is actually the new frontier for corruption in this country. Look at e-Citizen. Look at SHA system. We have a 104 billion system that cannot prevent a 10 billion fraud. What a mismatch. So you spent 104 billion to prevent a 10 billion crime, and the 10 billion crime still happens. You know, we have, again, you look at all these systems, there are two issues coming up. One is ownership and control. Sure, we have now issues of ownership and control. E-Citizen, there is a clamor. This eGPS, we do not know who owns it. You do not know where it is hosted. You know, so I actually think we could be trying to exacerbate corruption in this country by having some secret ways of procuring government entities. So I think eGPS should not be rushed. Let Badi come out and explain to us what this thing is all about. Let us share the results of the pilot. We were told the pilot, I don't know, was done in 3 counties. Let us hear those governors, what they found out, what worked, what did not work. Imagine some taking e-procurement to your local primary school, because I believe they'll always be subjected to eGPS. Now, even the head teacher, who has trained him, he has no laptop. How will he, you know, this thing is a mess. So why don't we start it maybe with a bigger organization and give ourselves a 3-year period within which to gradually roll it out, educate Kenyans, you know. But however, I support, I support automation, but it cannot be automation for the sake of it.
Okay. And of course, when we had the Cabinet Secretary last week on Thursday, he also said that even he himself in his own state departments, they had not complied, meaning they were not able to. Why are you laughing? They could not procure on the system, but the hope was that by the end of the weekend, that would have been resolved, so that starting this week, they can go ahead and procure. And therefore, that's where the problem lies, because we're now in the 3rd month of the financial year, Ken, because July, August, now in September, no department, no institution in government, including the schools that he's referring to, has been able to procure because the requirement is that they must all use EGP, which is facing challenges. I mean, what risk are we facing or suffering, and how differently should we do such kind of things with such serious ramifications?
Well, the risk is significant, Sam. But if you were to walk down memory lane, I would say Kenya has never been for digitization. And I'll give you past examples. You remember several years ago, there was an attempt at the Ministry of Lands to digitize the records when Charity Ngilu was minister. And you remember the resistance she faced at that time. A few years later, you remember there was a whole blockchain committee that was set up to look at how we can set up blockchain, but the results were never put together. So Kenya has never really been for digitization. And the answer is simple. It's because it interferes with what I said earlier about the political economy. It interferes with the process with which people get tenders. So this wave of digitization is only being pushed by outsiders. These are World Bank, IMF requirements for Kenya to be able to access loans. So it's not something that is coming from within us. And that's why in Kenya we have what is called a half-hearted digitization. We did have an opportunity back in 2012 to do proper, and you remember the campaigns of 2012, 2013 was about digital versus analog. And I think that was a perfect opportunity. And I remember in the first few months, there was move towards Huduma centers, all these things. But all of a sudden, that disappeared, because I think quickly people realize that digitization means transparency. Transparency means ability to get to that billionaire status through these lucrative contracts. So as long as we don't have an internal desire to digitize, as long as it's pushed by the World Bank, by the IMF, it's always going to be a half-hearted. And a half-hearted system is actually the worst system. It's not really manual, it's not really digital. It's actually a mongrel of the two. And until political parties say, we are going to run for office based on digitization, and this will be it. But we've never, ever seen that. Now, what is the risk? The risk is, obviously, corruption festers, leading to a poor economic outcome, high unemployment. And the result is what we saw last year with the Gen Zs, an economy where they say it's not creating jobs, money is being pilfered, and you end up with huge unrest, high levels of unemployment. So that is a key risk. You end up with an economy that is underperforming, as we are reading in the Standard today, and an economy where people are not getting the benefits of their sweat. And actually it leads to what the Gen Z clamor of June 25th last year came to. So that is just one of the risks, but of course there are several other risks.
Okay. And Ken, because it's been how many years of devolution? Is it from 2013? That's 12.
12 years.
Going to 13. And there are counties still struggling with on-source revenue collection. I don't know how we are doing with automation of that process. Does that direct us to how successful we would be with the implementing e-government procurement across the country, if you're to appreciate what the counties have been able to do?
Very good question, Sam. And part of what OSR, or otherwise on-source revenue for counties, part of what it must do is to embrace political goodwill.
Yeah.
And that goodwill, I think, is what Bwana Gishinga is really drumming up for political parties. And so OSR, or on-source revenue, for most counties that we see is largely based, again, on the political faces. And a good example is Nairobi City County Government, that, is a big equitable share earner, and is also touted to be the biggest OSR beneficiary. Yep. But if you look at some of the scores that Nairobi has been having, of course, right now they are dwindling because the digital system that was initially put up for the two previous governments has failed. So you have the expectation that digitization will help enhance and boost on-source revenue for counties, because when you digitize, then there are chances of curbing corruption. So you get more out of, what suppliers and even service providers are able to input into the system. But if you look at generally what counties are doing is, of course, to innovate in terms of what beneficiaries would therefore be able to accrue from on-source revenue. And so from what we see, I wouldn't therefore credit on-source revenue enhancement for most counties to digitization. Because in fact, not up to 11 counties, as per the latest results and the State of Devolution Address, and even up to the devolution conference that we had last week, with a lot of praise to Murang'a County, that was plotted to be doing very well in terms of OSR through their digitization. But if you look at, therefore, what counties have been able to do is to expand the streams of revenue collection. So if it is, for example, tax laws, the county assemblies and the executives have agreed that we are not going to increase our taxes, but therefore instead what we do is to expand the tax base so that we ensure that more people are opening up business streams. Wines and spirits are flourishing almost everywhere. You walk to most of these streets, you have pharmacies and, chemists opened almost in every street. You have, kiosks that are also being opened by president and also governors. So they are trying to innovate.
What kiosks?
Of course, food kiosks and Mama Mboga kiosks. You are getting surprised.
The president has been launching kiosks.
Are you getting surprised?
Yes, about the president.
We should visit Homa Bay, and we visit with you, Siaya, where we were last Sunday. And you begin to see how difficult it is for revenue generation for county governments. And therefore, I would not pride on-source revenue generation to digitization. It is a good thing to do. It is one of those frameworks that will therefore be able to enhance our revenue generation. Yeah. But I think the most important thing is to ask ourselves, where is, one, the ease of doing business for most citizens and most residents of our counties? Number two is, have we been able to put in place proper laws? And county assemblies, and I say this with a lot of confidence because together with the Commission on Revenue Allocation and ourselves and other partners like World Bank and others, we've done some tools for on-source revenue enhancement for county governments. But if you look at the technical aspects of even understanding those tools and the policies, not many counties are getting acclimatized to be able to review, one, the requisite laws. For example, one of the biggest challenges we have is what is called the valuation roll, which relates to what is called the land rates. So most counties are benefiting from land rates that are paid by landlords and tenants. But if you look at the laws that are supposed to safeguard and to excite that, again, not many counties are up to par. And that is, again, a challenge that goes back to county assemblies. So have we been able to build their capacities? Have we been able to enhance their understanding of what that means? So you go to Kiambu County, for example, with the booming real estate business there, they were among the very first top counties to be able to review the evaluation roll from 2016 to, I think, 2023, which is the most current. Okay. And the same is being adopted by a number of counties. So it's a good conversation to have around digitization. Whether or not it will be able to enhance on-source revenue is another issue, because as my co-panelists have already addressed, the challenges that bear on digitization are quite enormous. But then the most important thing is, what is the space of the user? Mm-hmm. Have they been trained? Do they understand what it is? Do they also relate to the end results around why we must be able to do it? One of the biggest things that I was hoping that would really excite the CS is what we call pending bills for county governments. And whether this EGP is going to be able to address that, Sam, I think is one of the biggest concerns, because you have suppliers who, for we call them the first generation county governments, they have never been completely paid for services which they offer to the county governments. So a second generation county leadership comes in 2017. Now you have a third generation county leadership in 2022. And the same suppliers, still have their pending bills. So whether this will be able to help us understand and be able to relate to the payment processes of these pending bills, and indeed who the beneficiaries of these payments that government, ministries, departments, and agencies are doing. Right. So quite a lot of issues that I think we need to grapple with. I agree with the governors, by the way, because there's something we call affirmative action preference for procurement. And these are women groups, youth groups, and even persons with disabilities who are resident in those counties. Yes. And some of them are just groups of poor people, quote unquote, poor Kenyans, who supply certain things to county governments. For example, just basic tea into offices. Car wash for county cars, will they be subjected to these procurement processes? And counties, through their procurement processes at that level, have their own arrangements, which they have made to be able to also support some of these groups. And finally, I hope that the CS and the National Treasury will be keen to address these queues that we see from, the directors of budgets, the CECs of finance coming to Treasury, even to queue with, hard copy documents, because they have already logged in things into the IFMIS. They can't be traced at the IFMIS level, so they have to travel all the way.
What do they need at the Treasury?
Approvals,
You mean the Treasury or the Control of Budgets Office?
What basically happens is you have to get approval from the Controller of Budget, and then at IFMIS, the requests that come from counties have to be seen in the system, and you have to go moving to National Treasury.
You also come with the physical document.
And it's a big challenge, and we keep we keep talking to county governments, particularly directors of budgets and chief officers of finance, in terms of how this can be mitigated. Right. And if IFMIS is a challenge to mitigate at that level, what confidence and what level of trust do we have from the National Treasury that now EGP, or electronic government procurement process, will actually be able to address that challenge? Okay. If that will create that efficiency level, I think that should be a boost that needs to be communicated to governors, and the consultation that they're asking is one thing that I don't think is too much to ask.
All right, Kevin. And of course, the Cabinet Secretary told us that obviously IFMIS and EGP will be connected, because EGP feeds off what information there is in IFMIS. So quite on point there. Now, you highlighted that there are many businesses, wines and spirits, and at the same time pharmacies. I'm just wondering what that is symptomatic of. Are we drinking more?
Of course, and that is really the kind of economic context that we are talking about. And when Ken talks about the political economy, it's not just in the political space. Walk into a county government and see the number of fuel stations that are coming up and who owns them. The kind of new real estate businesses that are coming up and who owns them. The kind of constructions that are happening, both for roads and housing units, etc., and who owns them. Okay. Then juxtapose that to what a common citizen in a county would own. So when the county government, from the trade and industries perspective, say, for example, that we need to enhance or increase our own source revenue system, you have to create room for people to do business with the government. So the easiest business we see is opening a wines and spirit, whether symptomatic or not, is a stream of revenue generation.
Okay, all right.
You look at the kiosks I was talking about.
I was not introducing a new topic, but I think we'll have to have a conversation about the structure of our economy and what sort of businesses people are starting, so that as we keep talking about expanding the tax base, expanding the opportunities, what opportunities are we creating? Just one more question on this one, Senator Hillary.
Yes.
You're saying that with e-government procurement, that you're going to have a lot of transparency, that we have equal access. You actually say that all of us can access.
Yes.
I like that. But so what happens to what would appear like confidential procurement? Confidential not because it should be, but because it's been forced to be confidential. Case in point, the Atlanta Stadium.
Well, Sam, we've all had this discussion about the merits. This e-procurement is merited in whatever language you can use because of the benefits that it can come along with.
Yeah.
It is, however, marred with challenges, including now what you've just brought out. And it is, the question that was running in my mind is that Ken has said it's true that we really need to have this thing at a political level where we all tell ourselves, now we are ready to accept digitization, for example, as a way of government procurement or procurement generally across the board. It has got its benefits. Now, what challenge will it be is, as you've said, what do we do with not necessarily confidential, but I would call a security sort of procurement processes that, for example, can only be provided by certain persons. For instance, I don't know, I've never traded with the Department of Defense. They are armored vehicles. We have got equipment like guns and all that. I do not think that would be subjected to an open tender process because of the national security or the aspect, quote unquote, within security. I do then believe that, of course...
So it will not be subjected to open process, so it will be subjected to what?
Now, this, you know, the law on procurement gives us the options. In this case, for example, by the way, we have got now an open tender, single sourcing, and that would now be more or less applicable to such areas because
how
it
do you
restricts...
identify those that qualify?
Now, your guess is as good as mine. For example, if I am procuring, let me say...
Let's talk about the armored personnel cars.
Yes.
How do you
I mean, I wouldn't open... There are service providers in this country. There are some who would do. There are some outside the country. And I believe those who are now involved in such a department, for example, the team that is working within the DOD, will always have those service providers.
From where? I mean, what I'm asking, Senator, sorry to take you there, there's a process called pre-qualification of...
service providers.
Service providers or suppliers, whatever name you want to give them.
Yes.
I thought that pre-qualification should be open.
Yes.
Once you pre-qualify and you need a consignment, then you identify based on pre-qualification data. Otherwise, how do you identify who's...
So what would happen is, in that pre-qualification process, there is also what we call request for quotation. I know that in this sector, it is Ken, Kevin, and Sam who are dealers in this particular security area. I ask you, ask Ken, Kevin, please give us your quotations on this particular. I want to procure a motor vehicle that is armored for purposes of use by CDF, for example. Out of the three, then you choose one. You do not necessarily have to open it up. It is restricted. That is part of what the law will allow. Restricted tendering to the specific service providers.
That will still be on the e-procurement?
I believe so, but I wouldn't want to talk as open as I would know. I don't know whether that would still be in the e-procurement.
That's fine.
And I don't think it would be, because if it would be, it means everybody else who is practicing in that sector will be alerted that we are procuring this.
When the Constitution says that a system should be fair, equitable, transparent, competitive. And cost-effective,
yes.
What happens to what you just said?
It is competitive from among the three of us. You, Ken, and Kevin. That is, and still also the same law allows for single sourcing, by the way, where now you can directly say,
the same law, but I'm reading in the Constitution.
Yeah, Article 227 says fair, equitable, transparent, and competitive.
Yes.
I would qualify it and say, among the three people who've been requested to give quotations, that is competition.
So Senator, how did you even get there? Because I asked you a question about Talanta Stadium, which is not, is it a security installation? Is it?
No, it's not.
So why did you tell me about KDF?
No, I'll say because that is one which Kenyans will understand. For example, that
there are explained to Kenyans about Talanta. I think they need to understand.
Kenyans will understand that.
The essence of this is, and I think we've referred to this so many times on this show, that once upon a time, Engineer Tum, who was PS Sports, appeared before the Sports Committee of the National Assembly. And he was asked, how much is Talanta Stadium costing? Who is the contractor? And he got an answer. And he said that is being handled by the Kenya Defence Forces, by the Ministry of Department of Defence, rather.
Department of Defence,
Eventually, the CS of Defence, Soipan Tuya, came, I think it was in March or April this year, and told the House, I think a figure of more than 40 billion shillings.
Billion shillings, yes.
And of course, you have to wonder, this is a sports facility. What is it doing at the military?
Well, for purposes of implementation, I believe that those who were involved felt the importance of making sure that we implement this very critical sports facility through the Department of Defense. And I would qualify that by giving you quite a number of examples. When Kericho County was hosting Mashujaa Day in their 2022, the period with which the Kericho Stadium and an upgrade of the road facilities within there was done within, I think, 3 months. It was implemented by the Department of Defense. Similarly, Kwale County, because I attended those two national events. So President Uhuru, then in office, utilized the services of DOD in a number of national infrastructure developments. And I believe the reason why he went that direction is because of the efficiency that comes with their implementation and also the expertise that comes in. I'm not saying we don't have out here
what
open...
KDF has expertise in building stadia?
No, I'm not saying in building stadia. I talked about the infrastructures that were implemented. I gave you the example of Kericho. It was not only Kericho Stadium. I gave you the example of Kwale. It was not only Kwale, the stadium.
What else?
Because there were additional infrastructures.
Like?
The road, improvement within the city.
So
and
DOD
it
has
happened,
expertise in road construction?
It happened within a period of 3 months or so. A procurement process, that would require advertisement, inviting of bids, evaluation process, award of the contract, and ultimately the implementation process would not have achieved that which was achieved within that timeline.
So why are we why are we in a hurry and there's a law that provides on how goods and services are supposed to be procured in government?
Whether we're in a hurry or not, it is the desire to implement some of these very strategic government projects. If, for example, we decide today that Bomet County were to host a national event in December, for instance, this year, Bomet County, we do not have a facility that can host such a thing. It might then mean seeing options and opportunities that comes that will require the government to procure certain services, including those ones.
Don't you think that's at the center of the problem? Because who is this deciding? On what basis? Is it on an emotional basis or on a need basis? Because if you want to host a national event, you have different facilities that can host that, including in Nairobi.
There are certain things that are normally not necessarily discussed. For example, the same constitution you talked about, equitable, when for instance, you host a national event, the infrastructure that comes with it is not necessarily because you didn't have and you are approved to host, but there is that aspect on affirmative. There are certain places, that certain important national functions can be conducted there for them to get some affirmative action in infrastructure development. For instance, Senate normally hosts what's called Senate Mashinani.
Yes.
We were supposed to have our 2025 Senate Mashinani in Busia County. It was subjected to the normal approval process in the Senate Business Committee, right? 4 counties had been earmarked. 3 of them, that was Turkana, which hosted us last year, and Busia did not have then the relevant capacity to host 6-7 senators for a whole week in the Senate Mashinani from the chamber, facilities within the chamber, committee meetings, and areas where senators would reside from among the hotels. And ultimately, now as a Senate, it normally invests in it because it wants to take Senate to Mashinani for the people of Busia to understand what role Senate would do. Part of the investment that would come is from the House as to the approval, and the process of now facilitation comes there. So it is something that we, and I would want to convince you to appreciate the fact that if we don't do it and say we cannot go to where we are not going to have 6-7 seats,
I'm not disputing
such places will not.
I'm just wondering, because these are national resources.
Yes.
National Assembly spends how many months? More than 6 working on budget of this country.
Yes.
When the National Assembly cannot explain the cost of Talanta until they ask the Department of Defense.
But I don't think they can.
Okay, well, he's here. He's a member of the National Assembly. Tell us about what you know about the costing of that, but also the broader picture about what's happening in procurement opportunities, some of which, like he says, because of efficiency, the desire for efficiency, have to be implemented by the Department of Defense.
Sam, if you look at the Kenya Defense Act, I think the closest that KDF can come to building a stadium or a road or indeed any other form of infrastructure would be infrastructure in case of disaster or an emergency. For example, if the country suffered massive floods, KDF may be deployed to restore bridges and things like that. This new invention, because I can only call it that, to have KDF getting involved in procurement, as far as I am concerned, it is totally unconstitutional and totally unlawful. The case that you've mentioned of Talanta Stadium, where details are still coming out slowly, because even as we speak, I think we possibly do not know half the truth. First of all, earlier I said that the newest frontier of corruption has been systems. When we were growing up, the easiest way to steal government funds used to be consultancy. There's a time consultancy was a huge way of stealing government funds, and people would create all manner of consultancies. Now, the new one, like I said, there are actually 2 emerging ones. The modern day way of stealing government funds. One, create some system and then use the system to create your own private tap. Okay? The second one has been this whole new thing called PPP. Some thing where you just agree between me and Ken. Ken has initiated a private proposal to build something, and then I accept, and I think that is what is happening in places like Bomas. And all these things, one of the things that is happening is that they are not going through what we would call a normal procurement process. They are not going through open tenders. We are not going through a competitive process where we say, so-and-so had a proposal to build the stadium at 6 billion. Okay, because first of all, we created a need for a stadium. That is the first thing, okay? We all knew we needed a stadium, maybe because our existing stadiums are old and we didn't have modern stadium. So we agree, we write a paper and say, we need a stadium, 50,000 seater capacity, it must have this, it must have this, it must have this. So you start with that document. Then from there, you go out there and say, who can do it? And it can be sourced either through competitive tendering, or, then people can come forward and give some certain proposals. So the new one is where just someone sits somewhere and decides we need a stadium, decides we need some big conference facility, or even decides we need an airport. Not us who have decided. And then they send you what I think is now called privately initiated proposal. Okay? Now, from there, you have all manner of procurement shrouded in mystery. If you look at the case of the Talanta Stadium, and I pass there every day, I have not seen a single uniformed officer either driving a truck, pushing a wheelbarrow, or even manning the gate.
But you're not construction sites.
By the way, in military construction sites, check when military are responding to this disaster. They come in a certain gear that it can make you tell. It can make you tell this is the military doing certain work. Military do not come.
Member of the National Assembly, what is the cost of that stadium?
We have heard of all manner of things. Okay, the first one I've heard, the first one I've heard is that it may cost 44 billion over time. I think that figure has been touted out there. The second one we've had is that I think we have mortgaged the sports fund. For lack of, again, there is a lot of financial engineering in these things. Only some of them invented in Kenya.
And who is financing it?
I have no idea. All we have had is that the sports fund, I think there is a private person who is building, and then based on the funds he has put, he's going to, we have mortgaged the sports fund for 10 years, and so he's going to be paid through the sports fund over a period of time. I think that's the bits and pieces I've had. And I'm happy to invite my colleagues if they have any other information. But I think all we see, Sam, is more darkness than light when it comes to Talanta Stadium.
Okay, I want us to close on this discussion. Ken, when you hear this, are we mistaken? Because you have a National Assembly, like I said, spends all that work, but they still don't know. They are passing a budget, but they don't know how much is going to what project. What is that?
No, it's very disturbing, Sam, and I'm glad you raised the issue of the Talanta Stadium. The bond that was floated was about 44 billion. Yeah. And according to the Kiaru MP in Ndindi Nyoro, he said if you include the interests on it, it could be well over 100 billion.
Wow. Now,
if you compare that with a stadium like the Emirates, where the Arsenal play, that cost $500 million. And you're talking about a project here on Gong Road that is costing almost $1 billion. So, of course, as an economist, one has to worry about the nature of what's really happening. And I think if the government can communicate the benefits of digitization as to trigger conversation on the lack of transparency, because now people can actually have conversations and say, oh, wow, Talanta Stadium cost this much. How much did it cost to build the Emirates Stadium? Then that can be one of the benefits of digitization. And I think the challenge the national government is going to have is it's not communicating the full benefits of digitization. It's saying, yes, the government will save between 50 to 80 billion shillings. So it's only the communicating the benefits of the government. It's not the communicating the government the benefits of the county. What will it be? What's in it for them to be able to adapt? And more importantly, it's not communicating the benefits to the citizens. And some, you'll remember, even with the citizens who are paying taxes via iTax, many businesses have said, you have all our data, you know our tax refunds. Why can't we use our tax liabilities to be able to, those refunds to offset our tax refunds? And the Treasury said, no, you can't do that. So the benefits of digitization are not always clear. It always seems to be very one-directional to the national government. But if they can communicate those benefits, why is it important to you as a business? Why is it important to you as a county government? They can be able to make much, much more progress.
For you, Kevin, what then do you do to promote this transparency even when it is not desired or maybe some procurement is sensitive? What level of transparency should we have even on those critical issues?
The highest level that the political goodwill can be able to exert. And if you go to our constitution, Article 35, access to information. You know, there is at County Governance Watch, there is a tool we call the County Governance Index that assesses performance of counties. And beyond that, we also look at access to government information and tools. And so the easiest a citizen can do is to look at the website, and also the social media handles. So what amount of information can you access from the government website? And all our ministries, departments, and agencies have a website. Yeah. How open are those websites, and what amount of information can a citizen from wherever he or she is access, from those particular handles? Number two is Kenya is a very good propter of what we call the OGP, or Open Government Partnerships. And OGP has very clear protocols. And Kenya stands very tall, not just in the region, but even globally, and is touted to be one of the best examples of OGP. But do Kenyans feel that we really are, sharing the good practices out there, and that we are also living them? So part of that is, of course, to ensure that we consult on certain reforms, like we've been talking about the procurement arguments and the reforms that are related to EGP, IFMIS, among others. Do Kenyans really understand when you're told that SHA is not working and that it is a digital system, and you walk into a health facility and you are locked there for 4 days or a whole day because the system is not working? What does that mean to a citizen who probably might not really wonder or bother about the big, tenders, for Talanta Stadium, etc., but vitu kwa ground where you are? How does that relate to what you expect from services to be delivered? And then number two is just consultation from stakeholders. And I think that is part of what the governors are asking. Right. That take us through this process. What is it? Because the governor is such a high-level player in the game, but the tail end of it is that procurement officer, that assistant director. Do they, if the governor is saying, "Iki to mimi hata these 3 counties, I don't know which ones they are." Yeah. How about the person who is supposed to be the end user of that system? So those are the things that we must be able to do. And beyond that is to effectively communicate. And I think that even the president has admitted a number of times that his communication team, and it doesn't have to be the president communicating around some of these issues. There are people who are in those offices to speak to citizens. And Kenyans have said, we have a very easy way to communicate to us. Get to TikTok, newspapers, kuweka nyama, etc. But innovate mechanisms to communicate to citizens, both the benefits and, as we were saying earlier on, if it works, it works. Say it is working. Okay. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then say it is not working. Then, and because Kenyans are very intelligent people, they'll give you, recommendations on where to fix, and so that you're able to make it work. Right. Otherwise, we are making headways, we are making good steps, but I think over time we again regress, and we go back so many steps, and we ask ourselves, are we still that country that we all wanted to be patriotic about? Are we that country that we wanted everyone to look at and say, I want to go and benchmark in the Republic of Kenya?
All right. Just, no, we're out of time. It's just
I wanted to comment about what Wandeto said.
That,
as Parliament, he said that they don't know the value of Talanta. I've just gone straight to, I might not be the best person to comment about this, but remember in July, a bond, an infrastructure asset-based bond was launched at Nairobi Stock Exchange. Yes. That data is available to the rest of the Kenyans to check as to what was it being launched, how much was it that it was launched, the year that bond was, it's I think a 15-year bond. And therefore, it's not that we would be fair to Kenyans to tell them we don't even know when Kenyans watched the president launching the bond at Nairobi Stock Exchange. The owner of Talanta is Sports Kenya, yes. The contracting entity is the DOD. Yes. And the contractor, I think, is CRBC. That information is available to Kenyans.
So the question I was asking is, why is DOD the contracting entity?
Yes, and now that is where the conversation about whether or not the DOD was contracted independent of any other entity or single-sourced, something I cannot give you the answer now.
Then contract
us to get there.
All right.
That information about the value is there.
So the value is the total value of the bond?
4 billion.
Not the value of the stadium, the total value of the bond.
Kenyans.
And how was it arrived at?
Okay. So I think the essence of this conversation is that there are so many unanswered questions. And I don't think there has been a proper formal explanation of exactly why we're where we are, why things are being done the way they are. But you're right to say that the contractor is CRBC. Obviously, CRBC is also the company that built the standard gauge railway.
Expressway, yes. Yes,
I think you're right on that. So it's quite direct. One wonders why not competitive? Yes, they have the expertise, but why not open it up a little bit? And of course, the question of funding, where's the money coming from? If the money is coming from the Kenyan budget or wherever it's coming from, that is information that obviously you'd expect that Parliament would have. Feedback this morning at Citizen TV Kenya, Sam Gituku, they are struck to use a Citizen Daybreak on what Kenyans are saying in the morning. Lekishon Laban, Kenya's counties are drowning in money politics. Governors buy MCA's loyalty, while some deputies plot impeachment to ascend. Development suffers. Perhaps it's time to rethink or scrap the deputy governor seat to curb these toxic politics of impeachment. What if the governor passes on? What happens? Gabi Wakasiaka says, members of county assemblies should stop blackmailing governors with impeachment over issues that can be resolved through other oversight mechanisms. Samuel Worth, we must win the fight against corruption. Governors who want to continue looting our resources have ganged up against e-government procurement because the system threatens to seal the loopholes they have long exploited to steal. Does it only happen at the counties? One wonders. Okello Mwalimu is saying the fact that the same MPs who passed Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act that demands transparency in public procurement have ganged up to shoot E-Procurement is both suspicious and baffling. Internet access isn't an issue. Which county office doesn't have Wi-Fi? All right. Sheila Sweden, governors are justified to reject Treasury's rushed e-procurement rollout because it's true that there was poor testing, legal gaps and disruption risks. There should be ample time for deep consultations. And finally, Samuel Worth, again, you say governors are resisting the rollout of e-procurement because they know it will expose the rot. It is no secret that many governors and their cronies run counties like personal kiosks. Why resist such an initiative if there's nothing to hide? That's important, if there's nothing to hide. But who else is hiding? Thank you, Mheshimiwa Geoffrey Wandeto, Kishinga, Senator Arisigei, and Kevin Osido. It's 3 minutes after 8 o'clock. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again some other time. Bye for now.